Hi, welcome back to TLDR.Finance, and today we're going to talk about the hot topic, why Georgia elections are important, and what that means for the markets, what that means for us as investors and followers of the market. So, why do you think the elections, obviously anything political, is important? Well, could it be power? I mean, that's obviously a big piece of it. But I'm trolling a little bit, but hang on. Ooh, control. There we go. Power and control. Two big pieces. And that's it. So for those here for the TLDR version, see it. No, I'm just kidding. We got a little bit more, but those are obviously the big things. They were pushing for control, the Democrats were, and hoping to get their people elected for the Senate, which they ended up did. The Democrats, the Democratic parties won, and that gives the Democrats now a slight edge. Think Vegas, think any of the games there, craps, blackjack, roulette, small percentage chance now of owning or having additional power in the Senate. They already had the House majority, and then of course Biden is a Democratic president. So so that was the big piece for Georgia, and what all this means is just additional ease. That's why I've had grease tracks versus a grease pig, because technically if they're all on the same side, right? If they're all blue, they're all Democratic. You'd think, which I think is a lot of fears, a lot of misconception, is that great, now the Democrats can put through whatever they want. There's no checks and balances system. Our system's broken, and it's not the case, as we'll talk a bit more here. So grease tracks or grease pig, yes, they're going to have easier times with certain things, getting past and getting through the system, and potentially, even though it's all Democrats or Democratic, not all Democrats are the same person. They don't blindly vote. Oh, it's something submitted by another Democrat. Great, yes, I'm in. They lean conservative, centrists, Tea parties, um, liberals. I mean, there's all different types. We'll get to some graphs here in a minute. But all that now comes into play. So the initial piece of red or blue, Democrat, Republican, is off the table, and now it's a bit more nuanced, which is good. So the checks and balances is still there. I wouldn't expect some crazy, huge pieces like tax reform overnight, but that could happen. So moving along of kind of things that could happen, reduced scrutiny. So Nancy Pelosi was all over Trump during this time. You're not going to see that in this next piece because they're all Democrats. They're not going to go after their own, at least not nearly with the vigor that Pelosi had for Trump. Less bickering and noise. Think like sibling rivalries, always fighting, bickering. When it's a divided House, you've got the Republicans constantly trying to bluster and fill out their chests. Hey, we're in charge. We have all the power here. Same with the Democrats. When it's all together, everything should be more calculated. The Democrats should know when they can get things through or done with minimal turbulence, excuse me, and that moving forward. So um, fiscal policy changes. Obviously, our girl, Janet Yellen, an original OG, is in charge of the Fed in that, and we see continued fiscal policy changes coming. Tax changes, of course, that was a big policy for Democrats and what was one of Biden's biggest points while he was running. But the biggest piece here, and I probably should have reordered these, was the filibuster. So the filibuster, it puts a bit of a headache on this because it's not just a simple majority. So with the Senate, 50%, 50 votes are Democrat, 50 votes are Republican. The tie goes to the Vice President Harris. But they can't pass anything with 51 votes. They need um, oh man, I'm gonna forget it, a majority over, known as this filibuster, which is usually 61 votes or more, supermajority. Thank you. And so with that, that could just be a bit of a thorn in the side for the Democrats. But kind of wrapping it up here, what does it mean for the markets? Markets like gridlock. So obviously there's a lot. They don't like uncertainty, and that's what a lot of the presidential election and now the election here of who's going to have the Senate and the state, and markets just they don't like that. They can't plan for that, and so that was a big fear. We saw a bit of a drop overnight on the night of the election results for Georgia, and then as you've seen the last couple of days, just the market's taken off. So will that continue? Probably not to that speed, but with fiscal stimulus coming, um, additional the swing from tech to value, or even both, but value stocks finally coming into play as they're getting a bit of help from the government in this new stimulus package coming. Um, and so potentially all good news. Companies have incredibly smart people. They have trillions and trillions of dollars at play. They just want to be left alone for the most part. And if there's at least, not that the Democrats aren't potentially looking to change some things, maybe some antitrust, maybe some raising additional taxes, all headaches for sure. But now that they know that that could be coming, and there's only one party, the smart people at Amazon, Facebook, Chevron, whoever can now plan around that. They can lobby. Amazon actually just hired Biden's son as a lobbyist, or one of Biden's brothers as a lobbyist to help them navigate the waters. All good things. Markets like certainty. They like predictability. And then finally, a comment here for the TLDRs, and then you can run away. Is are there bigger players than politicians at work here? And I like to think so. What are those players? Stay tuned. So, getting a bit deeper into the details here, why Georgia won or needs to win was pretty important. Pros for the Democrats. The filibuster is going to suck. The supermajority is not ideal. But again, they've got pros on their side. They've got all three houses are blue. They've got a lot of Democrats with them. And even some of the Republicans could, depending upon the issue, vote with them. You don't have to, if it's a Democratic issue, you don't have to immediately say no as a Republican. Let's be clear about that. And senators have actually switched sides and announced that, okay, I was a Republican, but now I'm a Democrat. They've done that in the middle of their term. It's possible. So just because they walk in with a red tie doesn't mean they have to say no to everything blue. Um, and quite honestly, it usually comes down to the dollar. Are they in an election year? Or do they need to worry about getting reelected? Well, in that case, they usually don't care whose votes or whatever is or what the issue is, as long as it will get them clout or the money that they need to stay in office and get reelected, which is unfortunately horrendous, but it is something that happens. And so, again, not that as big of an issue as you might think by just reading the titles and glancing for it, that, oh, everything's blue, so we're all in trouble. Not necessarily the case. But it does make it a whole lot easier for certain things like presidential nominations. Whoever Biden pretty much wants to be on his cabinet, done. Like who's going to fight him? So not. And again, the Republicans could, not that they can't, but it's kind of a pick your battle situation. So that one will probably go through without much turbulence. Same for judicial appointments. So there's a big, bunch of news about Trump appointing Supreme Court justices during his term. Well, there's some coming up that, of course, Biden wants to do. There's also talk that Biden wants to expand the potential seats on the Supreme Court or redo the whole judicial system to add a couple hundred different justices, not necessarily Supreme justices, but that is, again, one of those things that could happen, not that it's going to. That would be a big issue, so we need a lot of extra support outside of the Democratic Party in order to get that through. And the other thing, it avoids the microscope. As we talked about, Nancy Pelosi's not going to be hunting down Biden like she was with Donald Trump. So it just helps. It's a lot less, again, noise, bickering, a lot less of that going on so they can stay focused on hopefully getting some things done. And then, of course, upcoming policy changes. That's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to get done. It'll be easier. That's a pro for them as far as the Democrats, because it's easier to get things done because there's more blue in the office. Not easy, not simpler. Let's say that, not easier to get things done. So, but don't fret because markets, as far as we're concerned, if you're watching this podcast or this channel, it's all about the markets. At least that's what I want to keep it to, tied to finance, tied to markets. Politics definitely, lead or are important in the markets and what's going on, because you've seen the market's been pretty volatile lately. They respond to politics, but it's not the end all be all. So, like I was saying earlier, they like gridlock, they like predictability. The fact that the uncertainty is a lot less now that we know who our president's going to be, that we're going to have a blue Senate and a blue House. That all helps the smart people in the private sector plan ahead, hire lobbyists, work through their own legal and details that they need to get ready for what's coming. And now, why did the market blow up the last 2 days? Great question. Maybe it's been a long since probably fall of last year, where it's just kind of been on this, seesaw, or this razor's edge. Okay, are we falling? Are we going? And so to finally have that clarity 3, 4 months later, a lot of pent up energy has been there. And then, of course, a lot of stimulus is still out there, a lot of money floating around. So that could be it too. Um, Fun fact, last year about July, that's where I got this quote from here, only 37% of the S&P 500 was some sort of gain on the year. And that was at least 0.01%. So most of the boom from 2020 was from the FANG stocks, was from the techs, the work from home names, ServiceNow, Amazon, because no one wanted to leave to go shopping. They wanted everything delivered. And so towards the end, so in December, the final thing, it was closer to 65% was finally profitable. But again, large numbers of companies were just barely profitable with a percent or two for the year. A lot of the value stocks really got hammered. So that could help the future outlook in the markets now that we have certainty. We have some more stimulus coming from the Fed, or potential stimulus coming from the Fed, which would all be beneficial for everyone as far as the companies are concerned. Tech might not be as big of a boomer. Value and the other 50% of the S&P might help upset or offset some of the weight, take some of the weight from the shoulders of the FANG stocks. But ultimately, all looking good. But obviously that can all change. With a tweet, somebody could pass next week. Senators could pass, and then all of a sudden it's a Republican senator, and now the Senate is red instead of blue. So things like that could happen. That could be a big change. New pandemic. Unfortunately, there's supposedly the coronavirus is now pivoting a little bit, getting a new strain running out there. So who knows? But at least as of right now, the markets are up and running because they at least have some direction. They have some insight. They feel more comfortable about what's the future hold, at least for the next couple years. And that's all good news for them. And then to kind of wrap up, not all Democrats vote the same way, have the same beliefs. I mentioned this a bit earlier. So it's not just red and blue, right? You've got red and blue, but then you've got, liberal Republicans and conservative Republicans versus liberal and conservative peace. So these are some fun charts. The left side is all the different types. I honestly didn't even know there's this many. But I mean, look at that. There's so many different quadrants on that piece. You could technically be an anarchist Republican. I don't know what that means, but it's a possibility, right? So all the people on the left side here, I was about to just show my screen or grab my screen here, are the different types of Democrats. So even though, let's say, all those people are blue, if you're trying to pass a socialist issue, one of these other groups is probably going to get rubbed the wrong way. They're going to be like, nope, even though it's a blue issue and you're a Democrat, I'm not into socialism. No thanks. Right? So that is kind of the help for us in the sense of don't be afraid. The blues shouldn't take over the world. It'll be okay. And the other thing is here too is this graph here. So a little hard to see here, but I blew it up about as big as I could. But what you should be able to see is some red and some blue. And there's some independents in there, which are purple or some other color, doesn't matter. But if you notice, there's a lot of kind of purplish hues because there's a lot of mix of red and blue, right? So you can have a conservative Republican. You can have a conservative Democrat. You can have a communitarian Democrat, Republican. Doesn't matter. But so the point is just that it goes both ways. It's not just red and blue. Just because blue took over all three doesn't mean the world is ending or the world is taking off, whatever side of the house you're on. Like, if you're blue, great, good for you. If you're red, don't worry about it. It's fine. We'll be okay. If anything, turn the news off, stop watching it. Doesn't really affect you as an individual that much. Focus more on yourself, your savings, getting your budget in order, getting things in order to just benefit yourself. Like, unless you're on food stamps or you're a multimillionaire, if you're somewhere in the middle, doesn't really affect you that much. It shouldn't. So, with that, we're going to wrap up with Just so that's it. I just love these two graphs. Just helps really illustrate what's going on. It's not that bad. Blue is not just blue. Blue can be a little red. Blue can be a little purple. Blue can be a little green, according to this diagonal line here, whatever this means. Um, Ultimately, it's over. We have some certainty. Markets love certainty. They love gridlock. They love the fact that even though there's all blue, there's still a lot of hurdles that the Democrats have to overcome. So all good news. And that's all I have for you today. I know. More finance, more markets, less politics. Trust me, my eyes were rolling so much today. I had to take a quick nap just to make sure I didn't, hurt something. But hot topics are hot topics. And so let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And for now, I'm out.